Return of the Mount Hua Sect, Chapter 180. It is better than dying from frustration. The next day, Yunjong opened his eyes. Why am I sleeping here? Gradually, the memories came flooding in. Yesterday, Chongmyung was going crazy on them again, and he fell asleep as he fainted. Wasn't that the same as just fainting? Anyway, I don't want to get up. If he were to open his eyes and get up, he would have to go through what happened yesterday again. He didn't want to avoid the training, but honestly, it felt a bit too... Yunjong shook his head as he heard someone cry. Is he crying? Yunjong raised his body, shook his head to clear his vision, and looked to see where the crying was coming from. It was Jogul, who was lying face down nearby. Yunjong quickly got up and ran to him. Gul, are you alright? Sayong. Sayong. Are you wounded? Jogul raised his head with an expression that looked as if the world around him had collapsed. Yunjong looked at him with a serious face. The Jogul he knew was a man among men who firmly stood by his ideals as a macho man. He would never despair like this under any circumstances. Seeing Jogul choking back tears with a runny nose, it was clear that something horrible must have happened. Sayang, my internal ki! My internal ki! Internal ki? Did you suffer an internal injury? My internal ki! Damn it! It went up! What the hell? Then why are you crying? Sayang, my internal ki has gone up. So why are you crying bastard? Jogul made a mess of the situation and caused a panic in his frustration. Damn it! Now that my internal ki increased, won't we have to go through more of this? What? Did I hear that right? If I was fatigued or out of shape, I wouldn't have to get hit. I'd rather not get hit today. Why is my damn body getting stronger after being beaten? It doesn't make sense. Yunjong unknowingly checked his own ki. It's true. He could clearly feel that his endurance and internal ki increased. This was truly shocking. Just what was happening? This was the ki he would have to build up over and over for the rest of his life, constantly working year-round to develop. Oh? It increased more compared to a year ago. He could feel it correctly. In just one day, his body experienced a massive improvement. This was an absurd thing to happen. It worked. It's been absorbed. Yunjong unknowingly touched his danjon. Clearly, the pill's ki, which had occupied the danjon, was now absorbed into his body. In other words, I don't know if it should be called blood point release or a full body assault, but that crazy method actually worked. Just then, Baekchun approached. The expression on his face looked even more bitter than theirs. Right. Yunjong was slightly confused by this situation. Should he like this or should he hate it? That. Baekchun bit his lip as if he couldn't speak. This absurd thing actually worked. To say that ki could be absorbed by beating people. If this happened to get out, all the martial sects would turn into violent sects. Maybe they were already in a violent sect. At that time, the root of all issues approached them. What are you whispering about? Baekchun groaned. The internal ki has increased. Obviously it did. I had to work so hard yesterday because of that. Is that so? But why does the face of the person who worked so hard look so refreshed? It's obvious. Baekchun sighed. I have nothing to say since the results are so clear, but I just cannot understand it at all. Isn't this method only supposed to help clear clogged blood vessels? It's similar to that. What I did is a little different though. Then? I'm just beating you up. Baekchun's hand almost twitched to his sword. Maybe we need to cut this guy down here to bring some peace to the world. That was, if he could do it. How does that work? Chongmyung clicked his tongue as if he felt annoyed. In the past, he would have felt that it was too cumbersome to bother explaining. He would have simply grabbed them by the hair and dragged them into doing as they were told. But now he had no choice but to explain. Chongmyung reached out and tapped Baekchun's chest. How did you make this? These muscles. Baekchun gently lowered his head and looked at his chest. He definitely had solid muscles there. Before receiving Chongmyung's training, his muscles weren't this strong. Once he started to carry the iron lumps along with the third-class disciples, his body became like this. I trained. Then how do you build muscle when training? That... Baekchun went silent. It was such a natural thing that he never questioned it. There were countless ways he could answer, but none of them would be clear. It's simple. You got hurt. What is that supposed to mean? The muscle gets torn. Chongmyung slightly twisted his hand. Yoonjong, who was listening next to him, tilted his head and asked, You're saying that muscles grow when they get injured? Not just muscles. Everything gets bigger after healing from injury. The place where the wound is made swells up, and broken bones grow back thicker than before. Depending on the situation, it might differ, but that's the most common case. Chongmyung chuckled. In other words, what's the best way to train the body? Get hurt. It might sound ignorant, but it is the truth. This is even a standard practice in the field. What about the famous story of the Shaolin whipping their bodies or shoveling their hands into hot sand? Baekchun just nodded his head. It was a difficult story to empathize with because they were a sect that used swords. But Baekchun had heard that the Shaolin sect and other sects that trained for close-quarter combat used such methods. But isn't that method inappropriate for us since our focus is on swordplay? We have similar training in manhwa too. Huh? We do. When you first used the wooden sword, didn't your palms get torn several times? Baekchun lowered his gaze and looked at his hands. Hard calluses that have been there since he began learning the sword caught his eye. Right. And now, does it still tear? No. The human body gets stronger the more it gets hurt. Going too far can cause excessive damage to the body, but an appropriate amount of injury makes the body stronger. Wow. Baekchun looked at Chongmyung with admiration in his eyes. Why? No. Looking at Chongmyung with a subtle gaze, he said, I just never imagined that you had such theories in your head. The others, who were listening on the side, added their own thoughts. Truly surprising. I thought you were the sort that just ate when hungry and fought when angry. So you actually use your head too, huh? Really now, these bastards. Chongmyung's face trembled. Should I show you what it's like when I don't use my head? Is it going to rain? The weather is... They all looked away as soon as they heard what Chongmyung said. Shooting them all a wicked glare, Chongmyung continued. This is basically the same thing. What? Internal ki works the same. Baekchun didn't seem to believe it. What was Chongmyung talking about now? If we get internal injuries, it develops our ki. Right. What nonsense. How can an internal injury be the same as exercising your muscles? If internal wounds continue piling up, people die. Die. If the internal wound is severe, then people die. Right. Chongmyung sighed. But it doesn't make a difference just because it's ki. Having internal wounds means that your energy is damaged and suffering. In the process of recovering, ki will gather and repair the stopped flow of energy, eventually growing stronger than before. Baekchun nodded unknowingly. Currently, he had the key of the soul vitality pill within his body. With his skills, he could never absorb it in such a short time, but it was true that his body contained it. So the body is absorbing it on its own. Isn't that the result? Chongmyung shrugged his shoulders. It's not very difficult to understand. If you cause a proper injury and damage the internal flow, your body will need ki to recover the damage. Then, it will utilize the excess ki stored within the body and use that in the repair process. Once that happens, the ki is absorbed into the system and made stronger than it was previously. Chongmyung waved his hand. Ki, body, a simple logic that works either way. Chongmyung smirked at the sight of his seniors, staring at him blankly as if he couldn't understand. Must be hard to understand for them.
This wasn't something taught in martial sects. This was knowledge that Chongmyung acquired while wandering the battlefield countless times. It was a result of applying this very lightly to a safe level on his Sahyungs. But in reality, this theory was completed by him at a crossroad between life and death. It was only natural that those who hadn't learned this with their own bodies would find it difficult to understand. I don't understand a thing. Crack. The sound of bones cracking rang loudly from Chongmyung's fist. If your brains fail to grasp it, then I'll make your bodies understand it. Crack, crack. Chongmyung cracked his neck from side to side and waved his hand as he approached them. Sasuke, just think of this as a spar. If you think about it like this, even if you get hit, you wouldn't mind it too much, right? No, that doesn't make it any better. Chongmyung, it seems like your thinking is completely wrong. No situation in the world can make us feel at ease. Don't you understand? Where can you find better training than this? This is practical experience. It literally makes you use everything that you have. It'll also help increase your internal ki and strength. Before that, I'll run away, you idiot. Chongmyung laughed. It's fine. It's gonna be totally fine. You won't die. Seriously, you won't die. Have you ever heard of someone who died by training? No, I've never heard of it. Of course no one ever heard of it. Dead people don't talk. You can never hear that, you idiot. Baekchun took a deep breath. A fire was burning inside him, but for the first time, he suppressed his complaints. And suddenly, with a serious face, he grabbed the handle of his sword and shouted while looking at Chongmyung in front of him. Enough! Huh? So you're saying that if we endure this assault under the guise of training, we can get much stronger in a short period? Definitely. Chongmyung nodded his head without thought. This certainly sounds nice. Come to think of it, there will never be another chance like this. Aside from growing the internal ki, he would also get to fight with this monster twice a day. This was a chance that any warrior would have dreamed of. But Baekchun gnashed his teeth. You better be careful. If you get a cut on your face, that bad impression you give will only get worse. Oh! Chongmyung smiled. This is how you take charge. This was why Chongmyung liked Baekchun. No matter how much he got beaten, he would never give up. Try it if you can. Keep watching, you bastard. Baekchun drew his sword and ran towards Chongmyung. Die! That won't do. Watching the two people starting to get entangled, Jogul lamented. Since when did that bandit get along so well with Sasuke? I don't know. Yunjong sighed. Will we be able to survive until we reach Yunnan? The two of them felt like the road to Yunnan was still too far away.